accident on a mountain last Saturday. I split my bottom lip and ended up having to get 6 stitches in it, so it's very swollen now and it affects my speech. And I also cracked several of my front teeth. It's not a pretty sight. It's a kind of accident that could have happened anywhere. It could have happened on a high street or on a gentle country road, but because it happened at 900 metres or 3,000 feet, it was a lot more serious. It made me question the whole issue of safety while hill walking or mountaineering. Most hill walkers do everything they can to improve their safety while walking on the hills, but there's only so much you can do to eliminate risk. I usually try to operate from the standpoint of calculated risk. In other words, I try and make myself as safe as possible without actually just wrapping myself up in cotton wool and doing nothing. I mean, even if the only time you ever went out was to go to work and the rest of the time you sat in watching the TV, you could still die of a disease or get run over by a bus. You can never completely eliminate risk, and it's up to all of us just to try and be as safe as we can in whatever things that we do. So I do everything I can to keep myself safe when I go hill walking. I carry a first aid kit. I take extra layers of clothes with me, an emergency blanket and a head torch. And I always take along more food than I could possibly eat, just in case we get stranded and have to stay out longer than expected. I love scrambling, and scrambling of course is quite a risky activity. And the way that I try and reduce the risks around scrambling is by trying to keep as fit as I can, in the best possible physical condition that I can, to read up about any scrambling routes that I'm planning to do, and just to not to do anything that I feel is out of my competency. I certainly felt ready for the walk that we did on Beinn Eighe last Saturday. In fact, I climbed Beinn Eighe years ago in the early 90s with a friend when we were on a cycling holiday. And we stayed overnight in a bothy, and that was the first I'd ever heard of Beinn Eighe. We were advised to do it, that it was a really good mountain. I did have a map and compass, and we went up it the next day. It was July, but the visibility was really poor. There was a lot of low cloud, and when we got to the top, we just didn't feel competent in our map reading skills to actually go any further. So we stopped just a few metres away from the summit of Torridon. So on this trip, I was actually with a scrambling group, and the plan was to do the 2 summits of Beinn Eighe, which is Ruadstack and Torridon. And then we were going to climb the Black Carrolls of Beinn Eighe, which are pinnacles, and that involves probably relatively easy scrambling. So we'd just done Ruadstack, and after that we were to go along the ridge towards Torridon. It was a really beautiful day, excellent visibility, and I was just taking so many photographs. I was really just loving every minute of it. I wasn't tired at all because it felt to me like a relatively easy climb compared to a lot of the mountains I've climbed. It's quite a gentle route up that we took. We went, we started from the main car park, and took the typical, most popular route up to the top, which skirts around the mountain from the west side round to the north. And it's a very gentle ascent up to about 600 metres to the Corrie and Loch Corrynan. And from there, there's a steeper ascent of about 300 metres over rocks, and I think it's a delightful climb to do. It's pretty easy, it's not too steep, and the rocks are very easy to climb, lovely pink rocks. I was just astounded at how beautiful it was. So by the time we got to the top of the ridge, it was just really a walk up to the first summit, and then a walk down and back along the ridge up towards Torridon. So I was feeling full of energy, really happy. In fact, I was taking so many photographs that I kept getting behind the rest of the group. So I was just at this really nice piece of flat ground when I just stopped to take a few pictures, and I just broke into a slight run to keep up with the others. I didn't need to do that because there were a couple of other friends behind me anyway. Unfortunately, I tripped up on a small rock and I just went flying head first and hit the ground. The first bit of me that hit, and it didn't hit the ground, it hit a very small rock which was lying on the ground, was my lip, my bottom lip, and it just slammed into this small rock and the teeth just got completely crushed. I just lay on my front. I realised immediately that something very nasty had happened. There was a sharp pain and then it was completely numb, and I just felt lots of blood coming out of my mouth and lots of teeth, bits of teeth. I wasn't sure how many teeth I'd lost, but I knew it was quite a few. It's just that horrible sinking feeling, knowing that I'd done damage to my face, I was badly injured, and that was the end of our weekend as well, or for me it was the end of my weekend. I was incredibly lucky because we just passed a couple of walkers and we chatted to them. They had a really cute dog, and it turned out that they were paramedics. First of all, I was lying on the ground, my hands went up to my chin almost automatically, just to protectively, and immediately I could see that they were filling with blood, and I was shaking the blood away, but as soon as I shook it away, more blood would flood out. So it was a really scary feeling. My friends reached me, the ones that had been behind me, and one of them had a whistle, and she blew that whistle several times to attract the attention of the ones who were in front. And that actually attracted the attention of the two paramedics that we just passed. We didn't realise at the time that they were paramedics, but they came over and they were just like angels. I mean, I just could not believe it when they said actually they're paramedics. If it hadn't been for them, I would probably have attempted to walk down the mountain because I felt that I needed to get down as quickly as possible. And in many cases on many mountains that would have not been a difficult thing to do, but on Beinn Eighe, where we were, it would have involved going to the next summit and then down quite a steep path, or alternatively going back the way we'd come and down the rocks that we'd climbed up, which I thought were really easy to climb up, but it would have been difficult to climb down with an injury. The paramedics just said, don't do that, that would be crazy. First of all, you could stand up and find that you're dizzy and you might collapse, or you could get infection into the cut, into the wound. So they sat me down in a sheltered spot and phoned the mountain rescue operations, or rescue services. There was a helicopter actually attending another accident, and in the end we had to get the Coast Guard's helicopter, who came within the hour. I mean, it felt like ages for me because I was sitting trying to keep warm, but actually it was very, very rapid and incredibly impressive. I had a down jacket with me which I put on, and I also had a windproof raincoat which I put on top of the down jacket. I also had a fleece underneath and a warm top on, and I had 2 pairs of gloves, a woolly hat. In fact, I felt I only needed my scarf on my head, my buff head scarf. That kept my head warm. In my first aid kit there was a big bandage which a friend actually put round my face because I just felt my hands weren't working as they were used to, and also I could hardly bear to keep my hands away from my face. I felt that if I took them away, the bottom half of my face was going to collapse, which might seem ridiculous, but it just felt like a mess of sort of blood and teeth. So we sat there and all my friends were comforting me, everyone was being absolutely wonderful, and the paramedics warned us that once the helicopter arrived, really my friends would have to get out of the way because of the downdraft from the winds that it would blow up. So my friends, quite reluctantly, because they were really worried about me, they went on and continued their walk to the summit of Spiddy and Torridon, and I stayed with the 2 paramedics. One of the paramedics decided she would go and sit further away with the dog in case it got anxious at the arrival of the helicopter, and the other paramedic sat with me, Davy, very, very kind, and we just watched this helicopter land, which was the most incredible and impressive landing. I had my heart in my mouth, really. It hovered probably just 2 or 3 metres, it looked like, maybe more, above the ground for what seemed like 10 minutes, just trying to position itself to land on this relatively narrow ridge on top of the hill. And it was really a heart-stopping thing to watch. I was literally praying, actually. And at one point the winch came down and a paramedic came out of the helicopter. At this point I wasn't sure whether I would be winched up or whether the helicopter would actually land. So the paramedic, whose name was Dixie, ran over to me and signalled that we both had to crouch down because of the downdraft. And then the helicopter landed. It was just one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. Incredibly impressive. And once it had safely landed, we ran, crouching down under the blades, into the helicopter. I had worried that I might find it scary because I've never been in a helicopter in my life before. But I just felt so at ease with these very brave men. And it was just, I was so impressed and I felt so comfortable. You know, they sat me down, Dixie looked after me in the helicopter, and I did have to take a few films because it was the most remarkable experience. Even though I was still firmly holding this bandage around my face, I still felt as if the bottom half of my face could fall apart. At one point Dixie actually took a film of me. Maybe it was to reassure me. He asked me to take the bandage off and he filmed me. But it was a while before I could bear to look at that film. And then we flew to Inverness. I thought we were going to Aberdeen because when the paramedic Davy had been on the phone, he'd been told that there was no room at Raigmore and that we'd had to fly to Aberdeen. So when we landed, I thought we were in Aberdeen, but we were actually in Inverness. We got into an ambulance and I was taken to hospital. Even though I'd had my down jacket on and my windproof raincoat on top of that, and a friend had also wrapped a down jacket around my shoulders as another down jacket, I still felt really cold, and I think that was probably due to the shock. When I got to the hospital, I was taken to a little room, put in a temporary bed, or on a temporary bed, and my temperature, blood pressure was taken. And after my temperature was taken, the orderly went and got me 2 warm blankets, and I think my temperature had really fallen pretty low. So that in itself made me sit up and think. I know that in many cases helicopters don't get to the patient on a mountain within an hour. It can take a lot longer than that. I was very lucky. What if it had happened in winter? How long could I have sat there without getting dangerously cold? And I'm not in any way blaming the authorities for this, because I think they did an incredible job, incredibly impressive job. But it does make you think about how prepared you have to be in a situation like that. I was sitting there on the mountain for about an hour in reasonably good temperatures. I think it was probably about 8 or 9 degrees. But I got freezing, probably because of the shock. And it took me a while to warm up fully. My blood pressure when they took it was 185 over 95, pretty high. And it was the next day before it came back down to normal. The hospital staff were fantastic. I had 4 stitches put on the inside of my lip and 2 stitches on the outside. And I've only just had them out almost a week later, 5 days later. It was quite painful, but I knew it had to be done, and I just felt gratitude actually the whole way. There was talk of me going home that evening, but since I was staying in a bunkhouse, I was prepared to go home, and then a lot of blood started to come out of my mouth again, and I thought this is not going to be practical, especially in a bunkhouse. The doctors decided that I would be staying anyway. I think they wanted to monitor my blood pressure, and obviously they kept doing checks to find out whether I'd had concussion, which was very good. They checked me throughout the night, shining torches into my eyes and things like that. I know that I didn't have concussion because I could remember every single grim detail of that event. So from now on, there's going to be no more running for me, unless I'm wearing running shoes. At the time of the accident, I was wearing new walking boots, and although I don't blame them for the accident, I think the fact that they were brand new with a nice big chunky sole possibly just increased the speed at which I was propelled over when I fell. So I will certainly continue to wear those boots, but I'm going to be much more careful. In fact, I'm already being more careful when I go out walking just on the street. I'll use my walking poles much more. I tend to use them when I'm going down a very steep hill, but I'm going to use them when I'm walking along flat surfaces as well, because they can help your walking, and also they're really good at helping you steady yourself. And I'm hoping that will be a reminder to myself just not to get carried away, not to get too impatient. I've only had one other fall this year, and ironically, or maybe more than coincidentally, that was about 3 weeks ago, and it was in a very similar situation. I was actually going downhill at the time. I'd climbed two summits, Beinn Eighe and Beinn Eighe, and I was coming down from Beinn Eighe. My friends had been walking really fast. I'd stopped to take photographs, and I just broke into a small run, and I went forward in exactly the same way. Only on that occasion, my hands did come forward, and I was able to stop myself up to a point, because I hit my legs quite badly, and I ended up limping for most of the return trip home on that occasion. But after a few days, the bruising and the swelling went down, and I was fine. Before that, I hadn't fallen at all for a year. During that year, I'd climbed probably about 50 mountains, possibly more than 50. I'd climbed, I think, about 40 Munros and several other types of mountains. So falls are not common with me. They used to be. I used to fall quite a lot when I was less fit. But I think these two falls have really made me think, how am I walking? What am I doing wrong? Another thing I've noticed is that in some of the photographs I've seen of myself, I'm slightly bent over, so maybe I need to stand up straighter. I don't know whether I'm actually leaning into these falls. The whole experience is very unpleasant and definitely not one I'd want to repeat. It's also made me think about safety. I'm going to have to put a new first aid kit together, and I'm going to think carefully about what I put in that kit. It was good that I had a big bandage in my first aid kit. I had things like paracetamol, which I didn't take at the time because I just went numb. I'll also think about the clothes that I bring. I definitely was carrying a lot of warm clothes, even though it was really the end of summer and the temperature was quite good. But I think maybe taking a few more light, warm base layers might be a good idea. And as I've said, you can never totally eliminate risk, but an experience like this really makes you think about what could happen if. So I'm going to put some thought into that, and it would be really interesting to hear if you've had any similar experiences. Because I think many people, if they've been rescued, especially in a helicopter, you can feel it's a slight failing on your own part. No one really wants to have the emergency services summoned for you. But on the other hand, it's important to do that, because otherwise they could be out looking for a body. Seriously, I mean, if you're in a vulnerable state and an accident happens, it's much better that people know where you are and what's happened. Oh, and another thing, the Coast Guard services have been under threat, actually. A few years ago, the government decided to cut back heavily on the Coast Guard services, and at the time I really joined the campaign to keep them going, because as you can see, they're really incredibly important. I mean, I know that some of the rescues that they carry out at sea as well as on land have been fatal, and the lives have been saved. I went on to the Facebook page of the Stornoway Coast Guard, which is the service that rescued me, and I gave them a review, and I was really surprised to see that they didn't have any other reviews. And I think that's maybe because people aren't aware that they have a Facebook page. So one way that people can assist them is just to go onto their social media pages and post about how good you think they are, especially if you've been rescued by them or if you've been involved with them in any way. So anyway, I hope that you've learned something from this video, or at least found it interesting, and if so, why not give it a thumbs up and feel free to subscribe. Thanks for watching.